In the previous video, we have looked at the need for post-processing, the types of post-processing, and the various elements involved in post-processing. In this video, Mr. Saravanan Janakarajan is going to explain to us the features of enhancement and correction in detail. He is going to do this by showing some of his work as examples. So, let's go over to Mr. Saravanan Janakarajan.
The last video, we saw the need for post-processing, types of post-processing, and the various elements of post-processing. In this video, we will look at all features of enhancement and correction in detail. I will use some of my work as an example to explain these features. Let's look at white balance. White balance is the process of removing unrealistic color cast so that the objects which appear white in person are rendered white in your photo. The white balance issue happens because of the sensor's capability of capturing light. It also depends on the time of the day you shoot your pictures. The color temperature is measured in Kelvin, and a 5000 Kelvin represents the two colors. 3000 Kelvin will give you a cooler tone or a blue color cast. 9000 Kelvin will give you a warmer color tone or an orange color cast. Your cameras have a preset range of white balance like light sources, candle light, tungsten bulb, sunrise, etc. These have a color temperature range, and you can set them for the type of light which you are using for taking the images. What happens to your image with a white balance which is cool or warm? If you see, your cool images will be all blue, your warm images will be all orange. So how do you use your white balance is very important to get the correct color cast in your image. The advantage of shooting in RAW is that your white balance can be easily adjusted in the post-processing softwares, and that is why as a photographer you should always try and shoot in RAW. Exposure, it is the overall brightness of the image or the amount of light in the photo. A photo that has too less of an exposure is too dark and it is called underexposed. A photo that has too bright or lot of exposure is called overexposed. Exposure tool is used to correct the amount of light in the picture or the exposure of the picture. Now, if you look at these images, you have an image which is properly exposed. You have an image which is overexposed by 2 stops, and there is an image which is underexposed by 2 stops. So you can see the various images which will go through as the exposure changes. So the image on the left is brightest and the image on the right is darkest. Contrast. It is the difference between the light pixels and the dark pixels. Low contrast image contain a narrow range of colors. High contrast images have bright highlights and dark shadows. Adjusting the contrast can either make the image more vivid or can mute the tones for a more subdued feel. So to increase the image in terms of luminescence or in terms of making it more brighter, vibrant, you can increase the contrast, and to make the image subtle you can use contrast by reducing the contrast and making the image more subtle. So here you see a high contrast image where all colors are very vivid, very bright, and you can see that in a neutral image they are subdued, and a low contrast image the colors lose their luminosity, vividness, and they are not as vibrant as a neutral image. So that is how contrast will affect your image. So you can either use a high contrast, neutral, low contrast depending on what image you have. Highlight and shadows. Highlight is the brightest element in the image. Shadows is the darkest elements in the image. Now if you look at this image, you will see that the highlights and shadows as mentioned, and highlights and shadows are very important to make the image look good. So opening up of shadows is one of the ways to see all the details, especially in a wildlife photography or in a macro photography. You have to remove the shadows so that your subject looks much more clearer, much more in detail. The color adjustment has 3 parameters: hue, saturation and luminescence. Hue means the color. Basically the color name, we say red, green, blue, yellow, whatever color we say, that name is what hue is. Hue represents a shift in color. So when we say we change the hue, it means that we are shifting from red to green or green to blue. So hue is basically the name of the color. Saturation is the intensity of color. So which means that I can make it dark, I can make it light, and I can desaturate an image completely and it will make it gray. So one of the easiest ways to make a picture black and white is to desaturate it completely. Luminescence is the brightness or darkness of that particular hue or color. Using luminous adjustments on specific colors can make the color lighter or darker. Like I said, noise is always present. We cannot do away with noise. Noise is a grainy veil in photograph, and the problem occurs when it starts obscuring the details and making the picture look bad. So the noise in DSLR are called digital noise, and these are caused by limitations of sensors to capture your light. So lower light means higher noise. All pictures have noise, and there is no way of escaping this noise. Modern image processing softwares have great capabilities to reduce noise. If your image has a better noise management, then your noise will go down and your subjects and your image will look better. With a noise, your image will look very, very bad with lot of grains in it. There are many methods to reduce noise. In Photoshop, some of the options which we use are, we use the filter option where we have in noise, we have a reduce noise option. You can use the blur option. We have a Gaussian blur which will reduce the noise. In camera raw filter, you have noise reduction, but there are also many add-on softwares to reduce noise like Topaz Denoise, Photo Ninja, Neat Image. These are separate softwares which you have to buy, and they are dedicated to noise reduction. One thing which you have to remember is that when the noise is reduced, the picture becomes soft and loses sharpness. It is advisable to remove noise only in background or areas that need not be very sharp. Hence, you should remember this, that you just cannot reduce noise across the image because it will affect your sharpness. Sharpening. Pictures taken can be soft images for many reasons. One could be the lack of shutter speed, second could be the heat waves or depth of field issues or hardware issues like your lens optics, the kind of lens you are using. So you have to sharpen your images by using post-processing, and it can be sharpened by various methods. In Photoshop there are filters like sharpen filter, there is an unsharp mask which you can use on that, and in Photoshop you also have a high pass filter which you can use. In camera raw filter you have a sharpen option where you can increase the sharpening of the image, and there are many add-on softwares also like in noise for sharpening also, like Topaz Sharpen, Sharpener Pro DxO, Unshake, etc. But one thing you should remember is that when picture is sharpened, noise is added. Like earlier I said, when noise is removed, your pictures become soft. Here, when the picture is sharpened, noise gets added. So it is advisable only to sharpen the subject or main elements in the picture to enhance them and keep the other parts noise free. Cloning. This method uses different tools to remove small blemishes in the pictures. This is a very addictive tool because you will be altering the picture using various cloning tools. The pictures can have small blemishes like sensor dust spots, small disturbance like wires and twigs, dirt on lens elements, etc. Removing them can enhance the beauty of the picture. But like I said earlier in the previous session, that you have to use them in a very justifiable manner in such a way that the picture's integrity is not compromised. You can remove small blemishes, that is okay, but please do not clone different things into the picture and make it unreal from what you actually saw. The tools used for cloning are the healing tools. There are various healing tools like spot healing brush tool, patch tool, content aware move tool, or even the red eye tool. Red eye tool is used when you use flash and you can see the red eyes of the subjects having a red spot in them. You can use the red eye tool to remove that. And then there are basic cloning tools which you can select a part of the image and then start pasting it on the other part of the image to remove blemishes. So in this video we saw the various features of both correction as well as enhancement, and I hope that you have understood each of these features in detail, so that when we go to the next session and look at workflow, you should be able to relate to all of these features.
In this video, we have learnt about the various features of post-processing that we need to know, including correcting exposure, adjusting the color, contrast, highlights and shadows. We have learnt how to reduce noise, sharpen the photographs, and also how to use the cloning tool. The various correction and enhancement features that we have learnt can help us to master the workflow in the post. I urge you to experiment with all of these so you get a handle on them. However, remember that as a photojournalist, we cannot change the photograph. We can use these techniques simply to improve the quality of the photograph in post-processing so that it looks more real and more true to what your eyes saw when you were taking the picture. Be careful and use these techniques only to show reality as you saw through your eyes, and never ever to manipulate or change the photographs.